Once again, we're going to breathe in peace for 3 and exhale love for 3. Reminding ourselves that whatever happened during the day or during the week no longer exists, and what's going to happen after this moment also does not exist. All that is right here now in this present moment as you breathe in peace. And we exhale love, knowing that all is well and all is well, and all manner of things are most beautifully well. So we just listened to Boats and Birds by Gregory and the Hawk, and today's topic is going into a little bit more codependency and emotional freedom. You know, if you ever find yourself getting upset or giving your emotional power away to your loved ones and finding that you're using your love and your caring for other people as the excuse for you not to feel good. Anytime you get upset, anytime you get sad, anytime you get angry, frustrated, etc., 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 that actually is going into these cords, these attachments, these stories that we're telling ourselves. And oftentimes, again, it is because we care so much about people that we allow ourselves to get worked up. And so today we're going to go into some different techniques and tools that we can use to not be triggered constantly by humanity. Because that really is what this life is about. It's really difficult to avoid human connection. And so it's going to be beautiful to have a different perspective to look at this. And so first we breathe in, and we release. And again, Pema Chodron is one of my favorite teachers. She is a Buddhist nun. And she shares, if you follow your heart, you're going to find that it is often extremely inconvenient. Let's repeat that. If you follow your heart, you're going to find that it is often extremely inconvenient. Oh my goodness. Who has done that before? Who has noticed that you have, as I asked before, you have used your love as an excuse not to feel good. You have used your love as an excuse not to feel good, or have used your love for someone else, your attachment, your longing, your wanting to someone else to not feel good. Maybe they're not loving, maybe they're not communicating with you, maybe they're not giving the affection that you've always desired in the way that you want. And so here you're constantly having these thoughts in your mind and you're brushing up against, and you're trying to communicate, but they're not listening how you want them to communicate, and then they're trying to communicate and you're not listening how they want to communicate, and you just constantly find yourself going around and around and around and around and around in these circles. This can happen with children, this can happen with parents, this can happen with spouses, it can happen with friends, it can happen with even colleagues at work. It's constantly happening all around us. And really the greatest issue that we face with that is our ego. It's our ego getting involved. It kind of steps in front of our heart to protect our heart. And that actually is the thing that we really don't want to do. Even though it is kind of what is programmed into our minds to do, the ego steps in front to protect ourselves. That's the ego's job. The ego's job is kind of it's the survivalist in us. And so as we often like to talk about, a long time ago, that was very, very, very important, you know, when we actually had to fight for our survival. But nowadays, hopefully you're not going to get shanked at work, you know. You know, your colleague, you know, in the cubicle over here. There's not a war going on over the territory and all that fun stuff. But what's interesting is that our Homo sapien selves have not fully caught up with this survivalist instinct. So when we feel anxiety, when we feel anger, when we feel threatened, we still have this issue within us that we get into that fight or flight mode. We get into that fight or flight mode. And so it's almost like we are in a battle, even though 99, if not more % of the time, we actually are safe. And so the ego, we need to remind the ego that it is important to just unwind, just take a step back. In your homes, who has experienced a battlefield on the home front before? I'm sure every single person at least has felt that a few times, if not many times in their life. Maybe even just growing up. Again, that is a place that we want to have the most safety, the most security. But here, our ego is just like, no, we are going to war. We are remembering everything that person did to us as ammo to shoot at them the next time they say one more thing that pisses me off. So we gather all this material, and then we use it the next time that we go to war. So it's funny that we may no longer be in the daily physical wars of our lives, but we're definitely still daily in the emotional wars of our life. And that, again, that all happens because of the ego. So let's breathe that in for a moment. The biggest thing about transcending the ego that assists is the understanding of non-duality. We often talk about that word here, and a lot of times it goes over people's heads because it isn't interesting. It's kind of an esoteric word. Duality, what does that mean? A duality is dual nature. Right, wrong, good, bad, left, right. There's sin, there's righteousness, etc., etc., etc. For this exercise, we'll just focus on what is bad and what is wrong. When I say there's no duality, it is giving reference to stop labeling things as wrong, stop labeling things as bad. So the reason why we feel anxiety, the reason why we feel fear, the reason why we feel grief and all that jazz is because there's a story in our mind that we're telling ourselves about the situation, about our partner, about this conversation that we're having, and we're labeling it as wrong. We're labeling it as bad. We're labeling it as, man, I just wish my partner could understand me. I wish that we could just come back to point. I wish. The very concept of wishing, the very concept of wanting, you're giving resistance to reality that is not actually present. Because it's frictioning what actually is not happening in front of you. That's why you're having that wish. Does that make sense? I wish this could happen instead. No, let go of the wishing. Stop labeling it. The very wish means that it's something you do not prefer. Therefore, you are labeling it as wrong. Therefore, you are labeling it as bad. And so let's breathe that in for a moment. Anger and frustration purely comes from resisting reality. Anger and frustration, the very existence of it is because you're in resistance. The very existence of it is because you are in resistance. You're seeing something that you do not prefer, and it's pissing you off because it should be different than what it is. In your mind, your ego is judging it. This should be different. Boom, right there. That thought is enough to just ruin your day. Isn't that interesting? You can't have an emotion without a thought first that's reinforcing that emotion. So right there, what is peace though? What is inner peace? It's flow. It's letting go. It's interesting, if you put your hand in a palm, if you put your palm in like this little pond, and you have fish, maybe you have some fish food in your hand, the fish are going to come eventually and eat out of your palm. But the moment you try and grip them, they're going to swim away. So it's interesting that the only way to have this animal come and rest in your palm is to be at peace. But the moment you try to grasp it or control the situation because you just love that fish so much. I saw this picture one time, this little girl, she caught a fish and she was hugging it. I wish I could have a love like that one day. Where that girl just loved that fish so much. It's like that big. So, you just love that fish so much that you don't want it to swim away. So the moment you try and grasp it, what does it do? By God, you cannot grasp a fish in water for the life of you. Is the most difficult thing to do, especially with one hand. It's just going to dart away. But the moment you relax and you just sit still and you're at peace, it comes back. That is, humans do the same exact thing. The more you try to control a situation, the more you feel controlled by someone else. Hot damn, you want to run away, you want to get out of Dodge, you want to put up all these barriers. And so, anytime you're in an argument with someone, that's what's occurring. It's just wall after wall after wall after wall after wall. It's barrier after barrier. It's, all these different electrified fences that if you're in an argument, the best thing you could do is just stop arguing and take a time out and then come back and revisit. Because the more you argue, chances are you're just going to continue getting electrified because every time you try and stick your hand, something happens, the trap goes off, and then you get hurt. And so breathe into that for a moment. But where do arguments come from? Arguments, again, stem from a resistance to reality. Everyone is right in their own reality. Everyone's opinion is right in their own mind. That's not meant to validate your rightness. When I say that everyone is right in their own mind, that's not me validating your rightness. It's me validating everyone's wrongness. In a sense that, again, that's duality, but validating everyone's wrongness actually has a capacity to soften our heart. When we realize that we're all wrong, everyone's right in their reality, but that also means we're all wrong in our reality, then if I'm potentially wrong in how I'm perceiving things, and so are you, and so is that person, so is this person, why don't we just let that shit go? Can't we just take a deep breath in and say, I'm just going to practice listening right now. I'm not going to add any feedback. I'm just going to listen and truly hear what you're saying. And whatever you choose to do in your life and whatever speaks to your heart the most, I want you. If I truly love you or I truly have compassion for humanity, I want every person to be the happiest. whether they're with me or not, whether they're walking beside me or not, whether they're believing what I believe or not. I want people to be happy. I want people to feel at peace. I want people to find love. But here our ego says no. Because you did this, you're wrong, you're bad, you need to suffer for this. So, going back into releasing the fight, there's a quote by Pema Chodron. Life is glorious, but life is also wretched. It's both. Appreciating the gloriousness inspires us, encourages us, cheers us up. It gives us a bigger perspective and it energizes us. We feel connected. But if that's all that's happening, we get really arrogant and we start to look down on others, and there is a sense of making ourselves a big deal and being really serious about it, wanting it to be like that forever. The gloriousness becomes tinged by craving and addiction. On the other hand, wretchedness, life's painful aspect, softens us up considerably. Knowing pain is a very important ingredient of being there for another person. When you are feeling a lot of grief, you can look right into someone's eyes because you haven't gotten anything to lose. You're just right there. The wretchedness humbles us and softens us. But if we were only wretched, we would all just go down the tubes. We'd be so depressed and discouraged and hopeless that we wouldn't have any energy left to even eat an apple. Gloriousness and wretchedness need each other. One inspires us and the other softens us. They go together. I've shared this quote many times here before. But again, the reason why I keep sharing it is because very few of us are actually mastering this. We still get upset. We still justify, and we still give excuses. We still defend. Because here it's like we have this belief in our mind of what we think life should be. And that very essence of what we think life should be is creating pain. It creates every war. It creates every conflict. All war really is just a group of people thinking how life should be and another group thinking how life should be and them going at war about who is more right. And then often there's defense. Have you noticed that someone else's ego often triggers your ego? What's ironic is like, oh, I can't believe that person's so arrogant. You just got into ego by saying that. And so it's interesting that we're constantly at this tug of war. And so let me share with you. Practice active listening. What that means, what active listening means is get out of your ego. It's not about you. When you're listening to someone, don't even think about yourself. Don't think about your stories. Don't think about anything. Just listen to them. And then when you're holding space, when you're just listening to them, and then they start going on about something, maybe even if it's something about you, it's not about you, let it go. Or what about being silent, and then you're listening to someone, it's not about you, just listen, it's not about you. This is your mantra for the week, folks. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you. Anytime you're in conflict with another person, even if they are shaming you and they're blaming you for everything, at the end of the day, it's not about you. That is their story to tell. That is their story. That is their grief. That is their shame. That is their fear. Maybe you triggered stuff in them. Maybe you certainly were the catalyst for their volcano to erupt. But that's actually a beautiful thing. Why? Because now that the volcano has erupted, it's all of that stuff that was being built up is out, and now they're able to look at it. You just happened to brush up against them and you triggered something within them, but it's not about you because that trigger, that lava, was always there. Does that make sense? You may have triggered the explosion, but the lava is there, and that's their own doing. And so it's actually beautiful that it's out in the open, so now it can dry, now it can harden, now it can just return to the earth. Does that make sense? And so it's so crucial that we get out of our own way of perceiving things as wrong, as perceiving things as bad, because that is what causes every conflict. The ego's job is to make everything about you. The ego's job is to make everything about you. Remember that, I think it was a couple weeks ago, I saved that moth when I was line dancing, and then I put it outside, and like a minute later gets stepped on. I'm just like, oh, poor moth, you're going to get stepped on by dancing. And then here I'm just like, I'm a good person. I'm going to pick it up and put it outside. Pat on the back, Alaric. It dies anyway. That's my own ego feeling like I'm doing something to help the world. The irony is that here we're constantly trying to help other people. We're constantly putting our hand in other people's business. At the end of the day, they're still addicted. They're still suffering. They're still going through everything that's... You are a temporary relief. But until they're ready to deal with their shit, you can't do a damn thing. That is your own ego trying to make yourself feel better about doing something. Now, don't get me wrong, it's great to go out and to help people and do these things, but we want to be doing it for, I guess, for the most beneficial reason. Because a lot of times we get so involved that we get attached to other people's stories that here we help them and then they're not getting better and then we feel bad about it. Then we judge them for it and then we just go into this whole cycle again. That's not what we want to do. So breathe into that for a moment. The ego's job is to make it about you. That is arrogance, though. Drop the storyline and just listen. When we do that, everything works out as long as we do not resist. If you truly understand these words and you apply them to the rest of your life, you'll never have an argument again. Someone may try and argue with you, but you don't actually have to engage in that argument. Because say someone starts arguing with you, it's actually quite easy to just listen. But the moment they trigger something within you, and it becomes about you, that's when you start to spit venom back at you. But if you realize going into every argument, every deep discussion, that it's not your stuff, unless you're bringing your own stuff to the equation, you're trying to argue with them, it's interesting. You can actually very easily sell the waters of life. So breathe into that for a moment. Let go of control. Stop trying so hard. Let go. It's okay. You won't be forgotten. You won't lose. In fact, it will be the first time in your life you will feel free and at peace and happy. Open the cage to your heart. Controlling others is also controlling you. Did you know that as strongly as you're controlling other people, you're actually controlling yourself in equal measure? You really are. Because here you're trapped. As long as you're protecting that cage that you're trying to put around other people to keep them safe, you're stuck protecting that cage. And you can't ever leave. Because if you leave, then then they're going to get out. And so as long as you're trying to control the situations of your life and not either keep yourself from pain or suffering or from them from pain or suffering, you are trapped in that same little island. You're never allowing yourself to adventure forth. We must learn to allow our frustrations to soften us rather than harden us. Transmute the pain, transmute the ego. My new goal for myself, my new vision is that all my relationships, anytime I feel conflict, anytime I'm in a interesting conversation with someone, even if it's someone I deeply love, even if it's someone that I want to be with, maybe it's a past relationship, maybe it's a future relationship, and I find that it's not working, and I find myself wanting to grasp it so much more because I want it to work, because I love this person, and they should be in my life because I love them, and blah, it's about me again. Right? No. I'm going to take a step back, and I'm going to truly active listen. I'm just going to hold space, and I'm going to say, what do you want in your life? Why are we having this conversation? What are you trying to tell me right now? What would bring you peace? What would bring you happiness? What do you need from me to feel more free? How can I love you in such a way that you will feel free? Write that down if you're taking notes. How can I love you in such a way that you will feel free? At home, write that down. How can I love you in such a way that you will feel free? Unconditional love at its heart is freedom. And you want the fish, you want the bird, you want whatever you want it there because it wants to be there, not because you're trapping it in a cage. And the truth is, oftentimes when you allow freedom and you allow people to just naturally be themselves, they're going to choose to be with you anyway, because if that's their highest excitement. And if it's their highest excitement, it's great. You're going to walk together. You love going on trips together. You love having a home together. You love doing all these things together because it brings you both joy, it brings fulfillment. But if it's not, and you're constantly finding yourself at odds every day, then it's something to look at. Freedom is not at the heart of that love. Gloriousness and wretchedness need each other. One inspires us, and the other softens us. I want to speak on one more thing before we conclude today. So for those of you who may have studied spirituality and religions around the world, a lot of polytheistic religions, which means it has more than one god, there's always a god of destruction. There's always a god or a goddess of destruction. One that comes in and just kind of wreaks havoc and tears things apart. In Christianity, that could even maybe take the form as Lucifer. And so, what the difference between the Abrahamic religions and the polytheistic religions is that the gods and goddesses of destruction were not necessarily bad. They were inconvenient at times, but they weren't seen as so much evil as we do with Lucifer in the Abrahamic religions. There's something to be said about having a god of destruction on your side, though. Because sometimes things need to fall apart in your life before things can fall into place. But when you're judging it as bad, when you're judging it as wrong, you get trapped in that hellhole. Because all you can think about is how effed up your life is, how such a bad hand at poker that was. And you never allow yourself to look at it from a different perspective and saying, thank you, Kali, thank you, Shiva. Thank you for this opportunity for this to be taken apart so that now it can be rebuilt. Maybe this belief system that shattered my heart in a million pieces was actually instead shattering my ego, shattering my arrogance of who I thought I was. And now more than ever, my heart is soft and I can listen to people. Maybe I was a brat for a while in my life, but now I had to lose everything before I can actually relate to another person's suffering. I feel soft. I feel vulnerable. I feel hurt. But in that, I can relate. I can listen more deeply. I feel your pain. And that there creates the healing. So the next time you have destruction going on in your life and things look like they're falling apart, worry not. That's just one of those ancient gods coming along and saying, it's time for you to grow. And I tell you what, this is a Zen proverb. No seed ever sees the flower. No seed ever sees the flower. The moment you plant it, and it becomes a plant, and it blooms, it has the fruit. Sure, it makes more seeds, but that seed never gets to fully see it. It transforms. And so absolutely, that pain may not, where you're at today, it can't fathom the joy at times. But that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not going to bloom again. And that's where the hope comes in. That's where the understanding comes in. That's where not getting addicted to your present moment pain comes in, or your past pain comes in. So let's breathe into that.